Yeah, get that one from Moose. We on?
3, 2, 1. We are live. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, folks. Hi, Jeff, Kim. Hope you're feeling better. Welcome to our Saturday night in the shop with Rob answering questions. Tonight's topic is half-blind dovetails, which I love to do. And we're going to answer as many questions as possible. I'll do some introductions as we go. Frick, you got one to start off with? And I'll also explain what we're doing. So I'll do that twice. So we started Jake and I started this in 2016 as a result of an email from a wounded soldier looking for a dovetail saw. And that led to us deciding that we could devote half of our class to spots for combat wounded veterans. Used to teach a class of 12. We said, okay, we'll have 6 paying customers and 6 spots we'll have come in as wounded vets as our guests. And that's grown to a program that we now just completed our 26th class. We've had approximately 175 wounded soldiers go through that program. We cover all their expenses, travel, we lodge them, we feed them. Every vet goes home with $4,000 US worth of tools. And thanks to the Bench Brigade, which is something we started, I think, 3.5 years ago, head up by Jack Lane down in Texas, we are able to provide them with a workbench. We have volunteers that build them to our spec and deliver them right to the vet's home so he can continue on with this. And we've seen some stellar results. Jeff, who I mentioned, is somebody that's carried on with it and actually has a business, a woodworking business. Kevin Burris has a woodworking business. Skip has too, doesn't he, Jake? Not Skip. Bob Abbott has a woodworking business. Danny Bell has a woodworking business. Shoot, I should make a list of all the guys that have come through the program that have turned around and turned it into a business. Who's in Nevada, Jake? Kip. Chip just taught here. Chip Hoot. How do you pronounce his last name? Hochek? And Chip does extremely good work. If you can think of any other vets that have started businesses, I'd like to shout them out. Anyway, it's an expensive program to run. I guess we're somewhere around $350,000 a year now. So we do 6 classes a year. We start in April just because of the weather. It's a 6-day class, so they show up on Sunday night, they leave on Sunday morning following. We run long classes. We start at 7:30 in the morning, and we go until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And we teach them all the fundamental skills to being able to build a piece of furniture with just hand tools. That includes dimensioning the lumber from rough. So, for those of you who think this is a good idea, and you would like to be a part of it, obviously we don't have room for a bunch of volunteers, but we do have room for financial donations, which takes some of the pressure off of us. We're not yet it doesn't quite pay for itself yet. We branched off, how do we say that? We have now what's called the Purple Heart, what is it titled? Foundation? Nonprofit. It's a 501c3 in the U.S., so we can give you a tax receipt for your donation. And soon to be, it will be the same status in Canada. That's being worked on as we speak. So that's the purpose of why we do this. I stand here in front of you for 2 hours and answer your questions and offer my expertise to help you further your woodworking. We try to get it in twice every second Saturday night. And as a little reward, we for every $1,000 we raise, we give away a present, which usually values somewhere around $200 to $300. So Frick will put the link on multiple times tonight where you can register for the draw. You don't have to donate, although that would be nice. And we give away some dead cat sweaters and lots of stuff. Now, have you got a question for me, Frick?
Yep. First one comes
Frick's
from...
not feeling well tonight, but...
Well, I feel okay. I'm a little stuffy. I got a cold. All right, first question comes from Daniel in Ireland.
Hey, Daniel.
He says, what is your recommended size for the end lap on half-blind dovetails?
Well, that's a little bit of a tough question just because you're talking about different sizes. So let me show you some examples. This is a drawer. The drawer front, I usually try to keep them heavy, so this is a 13/16. And on this one, it is an 1/8 of an inch. On maple, which is pretty rugged wood, you can get away with an 1/8 of an inch. I don't think I wouldn't now go any less than that. I have in the past. I don't have an example to show you here, but I have in the past, and I regret it now. It looks too thin. I think 1/8 of an inch is good. Here's some little drawers. These drawer fronts is that 5/8? Yep. And that one is coming in at less than 1/8 of an inch. Here's a I need something better to read. Here's a little candle box, and this end piece is just under, actually it's right on 5/8, and that end lap is coming in at,
It should be an 8.
it's not an 1/8, it is just under an 1/8. Seems like an 1/8 seems to be the magic number. Here's a sample dovetail, one we cut during the class, and that one is just over an 1/8, and that material is, that's pretty thick. That's a heavy 7/8 of an inch. I really don't like them if the end lap is too big. It looks machine made, which typically is how they appear. So keep them on the thin side, but don't go too thin. I wish I had an example, but it's at home, the one I'm thinking of, where I really cut them
That
way
box?
too thin.
That box.
All right, yeah, go.
Good.
I think so.
Volume, Ken?
They won't
Let-
know.
Yeah, they'll have a 10-second delay, so keep going.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. Have we got audio?
Yeah, you got audio.
Okay, good. That last question that never got answered. Was it the last one we did?
I don't know if they heard.
Okay, give me another one. It didn't work. Okay.
Next one comes from Drago Dichev in Santa Barbara, California.
How do I pronounce his name?
Drago.
Drago. I remember. He's been on before.
Oh yeah, he asks a question every week.
Drago.
Does the Kerf X10 require any maintenance or sharpening?
Yeah, I'll show you how. So, I'm sure there's somebody out there that doesn't know what it is. When you're cutting a half blind, there's not a lot you can do on the pin side with your dovetail saw. So a lot of it has to be carved away, which is very time consuming and difficult. So this is an idea that grew out of something I learned from Tay Frid. And then I had a student come from South Africa one time when we were teaching up in Ontario. And he said, Rob, you should turn that into a product. And it was a good idea. So we did. So this is your pin board. And you take your dovetail saw. You've got two marking gauge lines to work to. One on the top, which is representing
Can't use it.
your end lap. Huh? Oh, that's 3/4.
Whoa.
What?
It's a bad example.
So there's one marking gauge line, and there's the other one down there. So all I can really do with my saw is go from here down to there. Can't do any other sawing. However, that's critically important in terms of getting it a good joint. But normally what we would then have to do is go in there and literally carve out all the rest of it. So if you take your dovetail saw and you were to make that saw cut, carefully stopping at the base line and that top line. Now I'll just make another one just so that you can follow along. Now, Jake pointed out this is a Kerf X10 for our narrow dovetail saw. So I need one that fits the actual dovetail saw that I'm using, which is right here. I got it. So what it is, piece of steel. My saw kerf, as a result of this saw, is 24 thousandths of an inch in thickness. This piece of steel is 25 thousandths of an inch. It's not sharp, it's square. What you do want is you want this edge to be nice and sharp, meaning it's nice that it meets this surface and that surface meet, so it's nice and square. And of course the same thing over here. So occasionally, it doesn't have to do it very often, you can take a file, holding this plumb, drag it along the file, until you clean that up again. Now, I can set that in that kerf. I do it by hand first, and I tap it until I come right down to this baseline, and then I can extend it right up to the other gauge line. And that completes the cut. Now all I have to do is remove the material in between. When I go in there, that wall is nice and clean. It's completed right into the corner. And because this is 1/1000th of an inch thicker, When you stop sawing, you end up leaving a little, see if I can do it over here. I don't know if I can or not. Might be tough to do. If you can imagine.
Just cut it and then cut it off.
What I'm trying to do is open up a. Yeah, but how am I going to open that up to show them? Well, stand over here, please. If we were to look inside here, you would see this saw curve stopping. That would represent the dotted line. And where it stops, it leaves a little shelf. And what you would have to do if you were doing it the traditional way, you'd have to come in here with your chisel and you would have to pare along the side of the pin to remove that little shelf. If you don't remove that little shelf, then that means the space at the bottom is going to be narrower than the space at the top. Put your joint together and it causes something to spread. Going in there and paring the side of the pin with your chisel, it becomes very easy to accidentally take a little bit of material off of the side of your pin, and now your joint doesn't fit as well. Because this is 1/1000th of an inch wider, when that goes down, it cleans that little shelf off just beautifully, and you don't end up having to deal with that issue at all. Where does the wood go? I have no idea, but it goes. That's the best part. I always get it like this, hold it right on the point, and then just tip it up as I'm doing this. And on this side, you want to make sure you're right down to your gauge line. And when you take it out, you've got that completed, which is, once you've used that, you would never go back to cutting half blinds without it, because it's.
So to answer another question on the X10, this is from Jack Santos in Middleton, Tennessee.
Jack?
Yeah.
Hi, Jack.
He says, how do I prevent splits on the half pin when using the Kerf X10?
Well, good question. And what's interesting is, let's try this. So look at how close that is to the edge, right? I'm going to see if I can do it without it splitting. Now, what I do, here, I'll give you a couple more examples here. When I'm doing an interior pin, I'm way in here in the middle. I'll just do it in 2 stages. I'll go halfway on the first one. So here I am, half the distance from here to here. And I have no problem chopping all the way down, driving. The second one goes right bit to the back. And I got lots of wood on both sides, so it's never an issue. But when you're out here, you don't have a whole lot of, you don't have anything out here. So what I'll do out here is I'll do it in maybe 4 stages. So I always push it in by hand first so that I don't end up accidentally driving that other than in the kerf. So I'll tap that down, and then I'll step it out a little bit more. And I'll go a little bit more. And then I'll go right to the end. Now I realize this is in pine, but it works. And nothing split out. Now, caution. If your saw cut were to have been on a little bit of an angle, see how that sloped a little bit? Now you may very well, because if I'm plumb, the force is going straight down. But if I'm on a bit of an angle, because I made a goofy cut, now I'm pushing off like that, and you're probably going to create a split. So you have to make sure your cuts are plumb. That's something you got to practice. The other thing is, if you want to be careful, if the grain were to be running off on an angle like that, then I would say, okay, now you're risking it. So what I would do at that point, I would grab a clamp.
The other way?
What?
Don't you mean the other way?
No. Well, either way. If it's not straight grained, you're running into if you're not straight grain, you're essentially doing this, even though your cut may have been plumb. I would come over here, I would put a clamp on there. Now I notice where the clamp is. Don't have the clamp up on here, because it'll tighten, it'll close in on you. So the clamp's right, the top of my clamp is right at that line, and I would snug that up and go ahead and do it. Now, I had that happen. I think one of these drawers I broke. It happened on both of them. It actually split off, and I had to go in and fix it. But typically, it never happens. It always works out. Now, adding to that is my half-blind dovetail chisel, which is another. I wouldn't cut half blinds without it. It allows you to go into those angled corners on both sides when you're hollowing out that material or excavating that material. So every once in a while, if you notice that those edges start to get a little rounded over, just give it a couple of drags on a file, holding it plumb, and you're back in business. Ugh, get rid of this hair. Frick wants me to keep it, and I keep arguing with him.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Frick, next.
John Root in the chat says,
Hi, John.
When do you use through dovetails and half-blind dovetails?
Pardon? When do you use through? When do you use half blind?
Yep.
Nobody said?
Yep.
Well, 90% of the dovetails you're going to cut most likely are going to be in a drawer. So that's a good example. This is just kind of more or less following tradition, but most didn't want to see a through dovetail on the front of the drawer. When you close it, they just want to see the wood. I actually like it. Now this is the influence I had from Alan Peters. You'll notice on these, can you see this, Jake? On these, the dovetails, I brought the dovetails all the way through, and it's part of the feature. When this is done, you're going to see the ends of the tails here. You're going to see them on these little drawers. You're going to see them on those drawers. So it's part of the look. But and that may and may not fit into the piece of furniture. If you're building something more on the traditional side, you're going to want to use a half blind. To answer the question real quickly, through dovetail on the back, half blind on the front. Now, on this cabinet, I have a through dovetail. On this little box, I used a half blind. Why? Well, in order to cut a groove to hold the bottom, and you're using a drawer bottom plane, again, I'm not using routers, you're using a drawer bottom plane, which, do we now have these in stock, Ken? Yeah. Yes or no? No, but we will soon? Actually, the blades are supposed to be in transit. When you're using a drawer bottom plane to cut the groove, Ken, would you do me a favor? Get me a card or something so I can have this stuff here, but I can get access to my bench. You might have to bring one over from the other shop because those ones are all being used. Thank you. Just give me just a second. I'll clear this off and I'll show you something meaningful. Do I have another example here, Jake, of a half blind on a case?
Half blind on a case.
On a case. On a case. This is a through dovetail on a case. I'm going to explain to you why I used half blinds on this pencil box. I used half blinds on this pencil box. Is there a case in here that has half blinds on it? Sometimes it's just the look. Thank you. Okay. So if I am building something that has a bottom in it, the problem with using a plane to cut that bottom,
A plane.
a plane to cut the bottom,
Oh.
a plane to cut the groove in the bottom, I can't stop it. Meaning I can't make the groove go from here to here. It has to go all the way through. Most fun way to cut a groove. So there's your groove. So on this, that groove, there's the tail. That groove goes right through the tail, but because it's a half blind, you don't see it, right? Because you don't see the end of the half blind. And the groove was designed to go between this pin and this pin. So I can easily cut that groove that houses the bottom, and you don't see it because it's in between the pins, and you don't see the ends of the tails, so it's nicely concealed. That's another time that I would use a half blind over a through dovetail. Next, oh, by the way, if you're one of our alumni of our Purple Heart project, we call them, what do we call them? What's Luther call them? What's the term we use? The guys, oh, come on.
Graduates?
No. Scholarship.
Oh.
If you're one of the scholarship vets, now an alumni that has come to our class, and you're on tonight, we would love to say hello to you and just to reconnect. So in the chat, if you put @Ken and your name and remind us of when you were here, we'd love to give you a shout out. Okay, Rick, next question. How is our audience tonight?
465.
Okay, I'm going to stop just for a second. So if you have taken our Training the Hand class at any time in the past, we've started teaching it. I think I taught the first class in 2000, may have been 2001. And you would like to now do an advanced class. We used to teach them. Taught our last one. When did we teach our last one? Huh?
No, Luther has been.
So 2016, 17, 2017? Yep. So we're going to do them. We're going to do 3 this year, and we've decided, we did a survey, we're going to do, all 3 are going to be drawer making. So this is what we're going to build. We're going to build the case, we're going to build the drawer, and that drawer is going to fit, how new, Moose? Fit like a? Fit like a glove. Okay? So if you're interested in that, it's going to be a lot of work. It's got a lot of work because it has to be done to a level of precision that will enable you to do this. I teach new woodworkers all the time, and I constantly remind them. Everything you build is going to be a sum of the parts. That makes sense. So if you allow half a degree out on each piece, by the time you put the whole thing together, one ends this way and one ends that way. So you have to work to a level of precision to where your eye cannot see how it could be made better. And if you do and you follow it, you should be able to produce results like this. So if you want to take that class, we are about to release the dates. Could happen this week. We've got it all figured out. There's going to be a class in October. There's going to be a class the end of July, and I think the other class is going to be in May, Jake? May, the 1st of June, I think, is when it is. Anyway, we'll actually release the dates. We'll release them on a newsletter to the newsletter audience. So if you're not on our newsletter, you need to be. We try to give you good information on there. And remember, you had to have had the Training the Hand class in order to qualify for that. Can't have people coming into the class that have not learned how to cut dovetails and sharpen and do the rest of it. It's a class that's going to require every available minute we can squeeze into a 6-day class. Next question, Frick, please.
All right. Next one comes from...
Are we short on questions?
No, we're getting quite a few from the chat. Luther's feeding them to me.
Is your mic working?
Mine?
Ken's.
It should be.
You want to dig up a few questions while I say
I got one right now.
Huh?
I got one right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Gardner42 in the chat.
Hello, Gardner.
He says, is it possible to produce half-blind dovetails using standard beveled edge chisels?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The only problem is, how are you going to remove that? How are you going to get out of that corner? Let me actually do this. So if I was going to I have to remove this waste. Okay? So here's how I would do it. It's pine, so I'm going to use a 1/2-inch chisel. Have I got a Sharpie here, Jake? I like to have a felt tip marker, which I normally do, except for when I need it. Would somebody see if they can track me down one? This might be one. I just need a Sharpie. I just need to put a mark on the back. So what I would do, I would come in here with the chisel on the back of the chisel, and I would put a mark right here. Okay? And that represents how deep I need to chop in order to stop at that line. So then I would set my piece like this. You got to be careful, and you're always better to do this in gradual, in small bits. So I'm going to come in here about a 32nd of an inch, and I'm going to chop down. Now, I just got finished saying we're going to go to that gauge line, but we can't go to that gauge line yet. Thank you. And I'll show you why. There's my mark. The fibers always break out ahead of the cut edge of the chisel. So if we went all the way to the gauge line right now, we might possibly break these fibers out down here, and that'll make a mess of our joint. So I'm going to stop about 2/3 of the way. So if you look at there, where I am, okay, now I'm going to continue heading for the bottom, meaning this gauge line, taking a bunch of small chops, not going all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to continue. Now, once I get in, if we were to divide this into thirds, third, and third, once I get into here, I can then start chopping down deeper. And the idea is I want to get to a point so that when I finally get down here to the baseline, I am full depth, meaning I've gone right to that mark. I don't bother trying to do it right now. No sense having to wail away on my chisel. It's easier to just gradually go a little deeper with each chop. Not hard.
Are you at depth now?
Yeah, not hard on the pine. You get into a piece of maple and it's a little different story. Now, I'm going to put my chisel right in the gauge line. And you always want to get really close before you put your chisel in the gauge line, because the more material you have on this side, the greater the pressure is on the bevel, trying to push this chisel edge back here somewhere, which leaves a divot along there. So I've got it reduced to maybe a 32nd of an inch. So now I don't have to worry about that. I'm holding my chisel plumb. I'll chop. Stop right at the gauge line, and you always want to make sure you are at the gauge line. Okay, there you go. Now the nice thing about making multiple passes is you can just break that stuff out with your finger. Just crumbles, even on hardwoods. Now at this point, I've got to chop down from the top. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take this in small stages. So I'm going to come out here, chop. Chop. Don't try to take big pieces. Your chisel gets stuck. Requires a lot of extra force. And the more force you apply... Did I do that one? I think I did.
No.
I didn't, did I?
No.
Oh, well, you know what? We'll show them how to do one of each. So how much easier it is with the Carfax 10. And then I just keep working my way to that line. Now here's another example. This is fragile. I don't want to break that off. The more material I have on this side of the bevel, the greater the pressure is going to be. So I really sneak up on this line, and I'll get in there quite close before I finally put the chisel
Shouldn't you clean
Right.
it out first?
right in the gauge line and make a plumb cut.
No, you got to clean that one out.
Okay. Now, I'm going to use 2 chisels. I'm going to use my half blind, and I'll use a 1/4 inch beveled edge. On this side where I've already cut or used my Kerfex 10, I take this. Now the advantage of this chisel is it allows me to get into both corners, and it keeps my line of force straight, right on like this. If you use a skew chisel, which is something other people do, skew chisel has an angle on the end of the chisel like this. You have to use 2. You have to have a right and a left. The problem is you're now pushing off on an angle, and in hardwood in particular, this is the toughest cut, cutting through end grain. But I can do it and keep that line of force straight on. Goes right into the corner. Now, if you look at this, you see how nice and clean that wall is? I don't have to do anything to it. It's already done. Whereas over here, I didn't do that. So what I've got to do on this one is I've got to come in. Actually, I did do that, Jake.
You did?
Yeah, I did take it all the way down. So skip that comment. Now, I've got to get into that corner with a chisel like this. So as you can tell, I'm not going to be able to get in there very effectively because either I have to push this corner farther into this material in order to get this all the way into the corner, or I have to somehow come in here and just nibble away at pieces and go top to bottom, until I eventually work my way into that corner. But it's a pain. It's so much easier to have your half blind that allows you to get right into that corner.
You didn't chop that down.
Yeah. Right into that corner. I'll show you another little tip. Take your marking gauge, and this is why I use my marking gauge a lot. I have lots of marking gauges, and I have lots of different cutters. And we keep the cutters on the rods, wherever they are. Here's right here. I keep the cutter on the rod, so if I want, all I got to do is take the rod out, put this one in. We sell them in a little plastic tube with a rubber tip, which makes it easy. All right, let me change subjects here. This back wall, if it's not plumb, if it slopes forward at all, when I put the dovetail in there, it's going to push it back like this and open up a gap along here and along there. You don't want to undercut it too much, meaning going that way, because if that was any narrower, that makes this even weaker. So what I do is I take my marking gauge, the same marking over here, and I use this to go in almost like a router plane and go side to side to make sure that that back wall is indeed either plumb or slightly undercut. Now the last thing I need to tell you is this. You can't reach all the way into the corner, and then all it takes is a little strip of wood in there to kick the joint back. So I'll take my chisel, reach right into that corner, and purposely undercut into that corner just enough that I know the danger I just mentioned isn't going to be there. And there you go, nice clean socket, lickety split. All right, before we do another question, Ken, who am I saying hello to? Who didn't get enough of us when they were here? Mic on? Can you hear Ken, Frick?
Yep, check.
For how much?
Okay. John Beck's on.
John Beck, sorry, John, didn't mean World War II. Vietnam era John Beck. I see John. John's down in Tennessee, isn't he?
John Brown's on. JB.
JB's a little closer to home. JB's a Canadian vet up in Fredericton. Hi, John.
Jeff O'Connor's on.
Jeff O'Connor, he's sick. Poor Jeffrey's home with his wife, eating chicken soup, trying to get better. Hi, Jeff.
Miguel Miller.
Mike
Miller.
Yeah.
John Wellens.
Hi, Mike.
John Wellens.
John Wellens. Oh, that name sounds familiar. Jake, help me up with John Wellens.
Anyway, John.
What did he say? What year?
July this past year. He said.
Oh, just July this past year. Oh, that makes me a bad memory. You weren't here in July. John. Oh, John, I wish you would say something else. There's make something. Sorry, John. I'm trying.
Chris McCoy.
Chris.
He was in class number 26. He said.
Just had him. Yeah. Tell me something about Chris.
Chris was the guy that works for Nestle, and the Nestle coworkers helped build that bench for.
Oh, yeah. Okay. When they say the last name, rarely do I get to know their last name.
Michael Delvoy.
I'm Mike. Yeah, remember Mike.
Ryan Groves.
Ryan.
Jim Robinson.
Jim.
Jim Eakin.
Jim Eakin, Golden Eye.
Ferris Butler.
Ferris, I just read your Christmas card, Ferris.
Our favorite newfie, Kyle.
Kyle. Oh yeah. Well, that just happens to remind me of something. So, how long ago did we start this?
Pre-COVID.
We did this just for Kyle. So, Angie is Ken's cousin. Angie has cerebral palsy. She's confined to her bed in her room right now, but she's going to be coming to the shop. So she watches. She's our number one fan. How many videos has she viewed, Jake?
All of them.
How many times?
Multiple.
So she's in her bed. This is a picture of. Can you get in close on that?
Up on your shelf.
Well, this is the picture of her when I met her.
Okay.
So this is Angie. See it? And Angie watches on her iPad.
Yep.
So I thought, well, we need to make a little bed. What do you call it? Bed desk?
Bed desk.
Bed desk. It's got a little ledge right here. It's all finished and ready to go. So she can set it right on there. She's got a little drawer. You have to have a drawer. If I make it, you have to have a drawer, whether we have anything to put in there or not. First time we did dovetails with hanging supports, because I had to keep this really light so that she could easily move it around. And that'll sit right there on her desk, and it'll be perched just perfectly so that she can see it. Well, we couldn't build we had to have an open concept on the bottom. But we will deliver that as soon as Lynn allows us. Flu season, we stay away from them, so just in case. So, Kyle, it's done. Anybody else, Ken?
Kent Boyce is on.
Kent up in, Kent wasn't a vet, but Kent's part of our Purple Heart Project up in Ontario. Kent and Ken and Jack and Luther are all on the board members of the Purple Heart Project. Keep me posted if anybody else pipes up.
Yeah. Oh, and Luther posted the dates of the advanced classes.
Oh, did he?
May 27th to June 1st, July 29th to August 2nd, October 7th to 12th.
Okay, good. Thank you, Luther. So those are the dates. If you're interested, we're giving you advance notice of probably, what do we usually give them? 2 weeks and a bit? 2 weeks and a bit, that you can get your schedule arranged, and then when we open them up, it'll be first come, first served. Remember, you had to have had the training the hand class in order to attend this. This is an advanced class. You need to have your dovetail skills up to snuff and your sharpening. Okay, Frick, please, and thank you.
Can we make our other announcement?
I don't know what it is.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
whoops. Well,
let me do a couple questions. And then,
all right, we just have a lot of people on right now. It's a good time.
Okay, give me one question, then you can make that announcement.
All right, Dwayne Hausler in the chat.
Hi, Dwayne.
He says, how do you deal with highly figured wood and prevent chips or blowouts when cutting dovetails?
Well, it's a good question. the problem with highly figured wood is there is rarely a grain direction. It's kind of going everywhere. The best way to do it, takes a little extra work, but the best way to do it is what I did right here. So this was we called this the bloke box. So you'll notice that the drawer front, Jake, do you need to get in close on this? You think you do, because I'm going to show them some stuff. So the drawer fronts are made with Claro walnut. Beautiful, highly figured wood. Bring this over so you can see. And if you try to cut dovetails in that, it's just going to be extremely difficult, especially when it comes to chiseling. Well, what I did, and I did it for the aesthetic appeal, but I used the same piece, or the piece right after it. They're all in succession. So this one is the same as this one, and this piece is also the same. So you'll notice also that if you follow the grain, it comes right up and over. See that? Now if you look at the bottom, you'll understand how and why. So that's a piece of black walnut, cut as a half blind, and then I veneered this piece of veneer on top. And I took the next piece, and I took one piece and I cut across the top to do that, and then on the front. So you take advantage of the nice stability of the straight-grained walnut. You have the best of both worlds because you get the beautiful figure on the Claro walnut, but nobody could be any the wiser if they didn't look at the bottom. So my recommendation is, especially when you're dealing with figured wood, and Alan Peters taught me this as well, is that instead of using a 3/4 inch thick piece of beautiful figured wood, slice it. Get a lot more use out of it. Use your plain wood for the body of it, and then add that to it. So that doesn't have to be veneer. It could have been a piece that you just sawed off, that figured piece. That's your best bet. If you're not going to do that and you insist on cutting half blinds in a piece of highly figured wood, then you just have to be prepared to go very slow and take very, very small bites. Otherwise, it'll be a mess on you. There really isn't anything you can do. Just imagine you're chopping, and at one point you're chopping long grain, then you're chopping end grain, and then you're chopping stuff that's on the side. Just all over the place. Very difficult. Okay, Frick, tell them what we're going to tell them.
All right. So, very exciting news for the first time in
Exciting for who?
me, because I get to tag along, and for those of you in this area. After 4 years, we're finally returning to Florida.
Sue B.
This is for Sue B.
Is she on?
She is, yeah. So we
Hi,
are
Sue.
coming back
I want to go to that chicken place.
to Florida. And so we will, Rob will have a seminar at 2 different woodcraft locations, Orlando and Tampa?
Clearwater Beach.
Clearwater.
Yeah.
And we don't know which dates exactly, but it's the weekend of March 30th and April 6th.
No.
So,
Isn't it the weekend before that? It can't be March, can't be April. But anyway, we'll give them the exact dates. I've already spoken to the stores. I have to get back to them and confirm.
anyway, so start making your plans to be there if you can. We'd love to see you all. I'll be there. Rob will be there.
Jake won't.
Well,
He'll be home here. Somebody has to shovel the snow out of the driveway.
I'm still trying to convince Jake. But Jake has his own special announcement. Do you want to make that, Jake?
He hasn't told him yet?
I don't know. They know?
Yeah. Yeah. Megan's pregnant.
Oh, Jake's wife is pregnant, so
Due in
that's
May.
it's cutting a little close, so they're not sure if they're going to be able to make it to Florida with us, but we're trying. Anyway, hope to see you all there.
Next question.
Ryan Giardin, hopefully I said that right, in the chat. He says, what other applications do you use half-blind dovetails for other than drawers?
Remember I said on the box, so that you can use your plane to cut the groove to house the bottom. Sometimes you'll do it I don't know why, but sometimes you might do it just on a cabinet instead of a through dovetail. Again, the only thing I can think of is so that it's easier to cut the groove in the back. But I can't imagine using a half blind unless you don't want to interrupt the look of the top. If you don't want to see tails or pins coming through, then you would have you use a half blind. It would allow your grain your grain to run from one end to the other. So if you took a drawer, this. You know, imagine your cabinet like this and you had a nice highly figured top. So your cabinet's going to sit like that and you don't have anything interrupting that. Dovetails on the side. But drawers and boxes primarily. Next, Rick.
Next one comes from Dwight Blake, also in the chat.
Dwight?
Yeah, he says, do
Howdy.
the fish tail chisels really make a difference to clean out the waste on half-blind dovetails?
Wouldn't do them without them.
You should clarify.
What? Well, it's not, so here's the problem. They make a fishtail, but the problem is that they flex terribly. That's why I decided to make ours like this.
Can you explain?
Lot more beef. Yeah, the fishtail tends to be they take a really narrow chisel and then they flare it at the end. And the problem is that you're pushing or pounding on it and it flexes. I don't like it.
Multiple reasons.
So what I did, took a 5/8 chisel, and we grind these. We do them right here in the shop. We grind it back. So we also have a relief here. That allows you to get into the corner without, most of them, the sides are,
It's a beveled edge chisel. all the
yeah,
way to the
the
end.
sides are not beveled. So you're having to push through the grain on the side. This allows you to slip underneath, and it makes it a lot easier to get that point in there and cut at the base of the tail, the side of the pin. That's why I do them. But yeah, when you're, he might not have seen this, but when you're getting in here and trying to get in that, look at that. Look how easy that is. You get right into the corner, and you slip over and you get right into that corner,
Yeah.
and you're pushing straight on.
A guy had a good a question. I can't remember who it was, but he said that half-blind chisels have a depth, a maximum depth that they
Yeah.
can cut.
Yep.
Is there a way around that?
Not really, because I've got 3 different sizes. So if I wanted to try, obviously I can't use this. You move, sir. I couldn't use this in there because that is wider than the end of the tail. So I have to use something a lot smaller. So if you're doing a lot of dovetails in small boxes, you're going to have one made specifically for that size. And then I can't use a small one like this to get into a large tail like this, because by the time you brought those 2 angles, you'd have no chisel left, right? You got to be, I'm restricted in that way. So yes, there are restrictions, but it only means buying another chisel, and that's retail therapy. Go for it.
No, the other way.
What other way?
This will only cut 13/16 inch in. What if you had to go 7/8?
Oh. Well, then we'll have to make them an even bigger chisel. But typically, remember, 90% of your dovetail, your half blinds are going to be in drawers. And how often do you have a drawer front that's thicker than 13/16 or 7/8? And even if it's 7/8, you're only going to be going in there 3/4. Next, Frick. Oh, I just wanted to bring something up. So I received this in the mail. It came with a hat. The hat's at home. This was from Steve Darby. Well, Steve Monroe. His nickname is Darby, and he was. We have a lot of EOD in our classes. He was EOD in Australia, so he sent me a sticker and he sent me a patch. But he'd asked me, he wasn't sure why we had patches, so he sent that for me to put on. But our aprons are reserved just for the guys that have come to our class. So everybody that comes, all the combat wounded vets that come, give us a patch that they most identify with. We have them sign the backside, and this represents 2 classes. So before we start the next class, I'll get a new apron. This one will go up on the wall. We have a whole bunch of them up there, if you can see them. And that's how we remember and honor all of those guys. But I was happy to receive this. And if you want to send me your patch, I thought, you know what, we should probably have some kind of a board where we can just put patches up that people want to send in. I would be happy to entertain that. But the apron is reserved just for the guys that are in our class. Ken? Your mic. Oh, yeah. Jeff.
Jeff O'Connor, his apparel sales.
Oh. Yeah. Right. So Jeffrey O'Connor, who owns O'Connor Woodworking, and his wife Kim owns Snippets and Stitches, but now it's called the tomato. Striped Tomato. StripedTomato.com. Jeff, who was in our class in 2019. Jeff is a retired EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, and he's in the Navy, or was in the Navy. And Jeff's one of the guys that I mentioned earlier that has started a business. He makes the kiss sticks, he makes the shave bowls, just to name a few. But his apparel sales, he donated all of his apparel sales for the month of December. Now, that wasn't the proceeds, it wasn't a percentage of the profit. If a T-shirt sold for $30, he gave us all $30. So we got a check. He gave us a check the other day for $1,000, and that was for the Purple Heart Project. That was absolutely fantastic. Big thumbs up to you, Jeffrey. I certainly appreciate it, and he's always paying it forward. There's a few guys that have gone above and beyond when it comes to finding us other vets that should be in our program, and I don't know if anybody's sent. Danny Bell and Jeff would be neck and neck in terms of how many other vets have come to our program as a result of Jeff or Danny recommending them. Big challenge to the rest of you guys. We should actually be, I'm going to get a little bit of a lecture right now. We shouldn't have to worry about finding vets in our class ever. After having 175 wounded vets go through our program, we should be dealing nothing other than vets who come recommended by one of those 175. So if you haven't, please do. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit further. Our selection process is such that somebody is a combat wounded vet that qualifies, goes online, fills out the application, writes their story. We read the story and we apply some form of a selection to it, but we're selecting from people we don't know. So we give all of their vets and the students that come to the class what's called a blue chip. And that means we trust you, having been through it yourself, to know who needs to be here. So when you use your blue chip, and it's ongoing, don't just to get one, and you say, Rob, you know what, this guy really, I know him, I worked with him, he's suffering in a lot of the same ways I was, he really needs to be here. Then that weighs very heavily in our selection process. And that's the way this whole thing should be running now. We should be dealing with nothing but guys who have come to us, highly recommended by some other vet that has been through our program. So, feel free to reach out to me directly if you want any more information on that. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Skip Martin donated his prize last live.
Right.
Moxon
So Skip Martin, our last live we did, which was on the 23rd.
No, we. Yeah. Oh yeah.
23rd of December. We gave away almost $5,000 worth of stuff. We were in a good mood. Santa Claus kicked in a big chunk of that. Is he on?
I haven't seen
Santa Claus on? Anyway, he's a huge supporter of what we do, he and his wife. We call them Mr. and Mrs. Claus. Skip decided to re-gift his Moxon Vice kit, or was it the assembled? It was the assembled, yeah. Yes, this is a Moxon Vice. It's like this. It comes to you like this, all ready to clamp on your bench and go to work. So we will give that away tonight to some lucky individual who hopefully will keep it, or else we'll give it away again. Thank you, Skip. Very generous of you. Appreciate it.
And the money...
Save me one.
Okay.
I got another big announcement, too. Frick, got another one?
Yep.
Remember, if you're a wounded vet that's been to one of our classes, one of our scholarship vets, I'd love to say hello to you. Just do Ken, or @Ken, in the comments chat, and then tell us your name and what class you were in. And we'd love to give you a big shout out. I haven't heard from Kevin Burris tonight. Go ahead, Frick, sorry.
This one comes from Clifford in the chat.
Hi, Clifford.
Are there any woods to avoid when doing half-blind dovetails?
Are there any woods to avoid when you're doing half-blind dovetails?
Yeah.
I'm assuming what he means by that is there any wood that does not lend itself to being used to dovetail? And I can't think of any, other than if you had a piece of burl, there's no visible grain direction, so it makes it very difficult to chop. You can saw anyway, but when it comes to actually using your chisel, that's where it becomes really dicey. So I would say the only limitation I would suggest would be highly figured woods, which somebody asked about earlier, simply because of that reason. And so what I would do on a burl is I would take whatever the wood is, if it's a maple burl, it's a walnut burl, it's a white oak burl, and I would use a straight grain piece of that same species for the actual drawer front, and then apply with glue the figured piece. Not only do you stretch your pretty material, but you make for a more stable. And remember, too, that the highly figured woods usually are not the most stable. They have a tendency to want to twist and curl on you. So used in thin form, glued to a more stable piece of wood is always going to be a way of ensuring behavior of the wood in years to come. Next, Frick, please.
Anthony Steventon in the chat says, if I don't have a Kerf X10, is there another way?
Yeah. So when Tay did it, he would just use a scraper blade. So he would take a scraper blade like this, and he would put it in there, and he would pound on the scraper blade. Well, a little easier to do it with a handle. And then when I got thinking about it, that's why I specifically made one out of steel that was just a thousandth of an inch thicker. It's a big deal to leave those sides nice and clean. If those sides aren't nice and clean, you have to come in. You have to come in with your chisel, and you have to pare along the side like that to try to get rid of that. So I'm going to take, can you come close? Yeah. I want to drive this home because they have to understand this. Gear up. Okay? So if you look real carefully, you can see a line right there. That's where the saw stopped. Now, if that wasn't...
Different kind of saw stuff.
Yes. If there was a ridge there, when you put the joint together, that means between here and here would be narrower than between here and here. So your tail goes in there, and you start to put it together. As it gets toward the bottom, the fact that that's narrower at the bottom causes things to push out, and it either splits this piece off or it opens up a bit of a gap. If I have to come in with my chisel and literally pare that side, it's so easy to accidentally take material like that. Well, once you've done that, you've lost your fit, because now this was the right dimension, you've just removed it. So to avoid having to do that, by having a Kerf X10 that's a little bit wider than the Kerf, you're going to ensure that when that goes down, it's going to clean that off. Now, something else I should mention. And Sean, the namesake for the Sean Shim, is actually going to be up here as my assistant in the April class, if everything goes well. So the Sean Shim is a device that we use so that when you're laying out your tails or your pins, you offset one piece from the other. And your sawtooth blade goes down in there, and you start your kerf. And you go one way for one side, and then you go the other way to do the opposite side. Well, we experimented with this the other day, and normally we would use 24 thousandths of an inch. That is the thickness of the saw kerf, and that's how much you need to offset it. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details. We've got videos that you can watch that'll show you that. But what we experimented with was using 25 thou. Now, 25 thou means each of the pins and the half pin are going to be a little bit bigger, meaning the half pin is going to be an extra thousandth of an inch bigger. The inside pin is going to be 2/1000 of an inch bigger. Typically, when I do a drawer, I make the drawers out of a milder wood and the fronts out of a harder wood. In this case, I have poplar and walnut. In this case, that's a lie, because this one I have walnut and maple. Wouldn't apply there, but I often use pine as my drawer sides. And by using that method I just mentioned with a little extra oomph, it makes that joint that much tighter, and it really works beautifully. So we're going to do a video on that on YouTube here quite shortly. And that all got kicked off because I received an email, a text message actually the other day. Where's my phone? Can I pull that out?
It's in the hang on.
I received a text message from a customer, and he sent me a picture of his dovetail that he had recently cut. I think it was his fourth or fifth. Learning at home, using our saw and our technique. And I was so impressed with his joint that I thought, you know what? We got to get the message across. If you, let me just find this real quick so that you can appreciate what I'm talking about. Jake, I'm going to need you. See if I can find this real quick. Oh yeah, here it is right here. Okay. So, hey Rob, it's Mike. I'll leave his last name off. You called me a couple of weeks ago about my sharpening order I placed with you anyway. Wanted to send you a picture of my 5th dovetail using your method. Thanks, it works. So here's the dovetail that Mike did. So he's home learning on his own. Is that blink? Mm-hmm. You see it? Mm-hmm. And I was so impressed with that, I thought, you know what? I got to get the message across. You can cut dovetails like that. Look at this. Here's 5 examples up here of dovetails. First-time dovetail, 4 first-timers, 1, more than 1 first time. And these are joints that guys cut, learned how to do it, followed the technique, and pulled off dovetails like that. Omar over here with only part of a hand and missing leg and most of another leg and blown up severely. Incredible dovetail. Brent Nelson, slowest dovetail in the world, but also one of the best. And Phil Gustafson, one of the first students we had, and Marshall Rommel, one of the first students. Now this is Justin. Justin had done some before, but his is almost perfect. Anybody can do that. If you're sitting out there thinking, oh yeah, I don't have the skill for that. No, you do. If you can have the dexterity to tie your shoes, you can do this. I have made it my life's goal to bring peace into people's lives through hand tool woodworking. It's such a calming effect it has on people, not just wounded vets. And cutting dovetails seems to be that crown jewel that everybody aims for. And a lot of people think, oh, no, I can't never do that. You're going to spend years practicing. You don't. We have developed tools. I say we, Jake and I, have developed tools that will go a long way, along with techniques that will take you even further on that journey. And you can do it inside of a week. You can be pulling off dovetails that you could put beside mine and say, there's no difference. And there's people in this room that can testify to that. So, if you want to get, it's first of a new year, your goal is to get perfect dovetails this year, do it. There's some tools you need, and follow our technique, and it's almost foolproof. Nothing is foolproof, but it's almost. That was quite a rant. How come I got off on that? Oh, yeah, right, yeah. Yeah. All right, next question, Frick.
Okay, next one comes from Sean in the chat.
Hi, Sean.
He says, when making half blinds, how proud do you make the tails?
Okay, so that has specific application to drawers, but good point, because it's not only just about drawers. And this is what I mean. When you're, I got to go into a little bit of some backstory here. If I'm doing a tall cabinet, 4 feet wide by 5 feet tall, it's a lot easier I like to finish everything right from the hand plane. Come to a class and you'll understand that. I don't like to sand. I like to take it right off the hand plane. You're not going to get a better finish than what you can get from a hand plane. But trying to hand plane a big, tall cabinet when it's all assembled is just a little bit more than what I want to tackle. But I could take that drawer, that cabinet side, that bookcase side that happens to be 5 feet long by 12 inches wide, and I can put it on my bench, and I can plane it inside and out. Now I go ahead and I cut the dovetails. If I cut the dovetails and they're flush, then in cleaning it up, I've got to plane this surface that's already been worked, both top and bottom. But if instead I make it so that I set my marking gauge to be a little bit larger than this is thick. So let's say I've got it so that the cutter is literally hanging over the side. And I do that on both pieces. When I assemble this joint, the pins are going to be sticking up a little bit proud, and the ends of the tails are going to be sticking up a little bit proud. Now, all I have to do is flush those off and bring them down to this already finished surface. So that's one time that I would make the tails and pins just a little bit proud. Another time is when I do a drawer. When I make this drawer, the first thing I do is I take my drawer back, which is what we call a secondary wood, and I get it to fit that opening perfectly. When I say perfectly, I mean there's as much resistance at the top of the board as there is at the bottom. It fits in there as perfectly as I can get it. I then use that as a template to make my drawer front the same as my drawer back, because it's easy to screw up when you're doing the back. You may take off a little too much and then you've lost your fit. So should I screw up, I can start over, because this is a secondary wood, it doesn't matter. Once I get it, and I use it as a template to mark with a knife my front, now on my shooting board, I can plane right down to that knife line, and I get it perfect. These two pieces now fit that opening exactly. So if I cut my dovetails and I scribe my marks based on the exact thickness of each piece, in order to clean up that mess after I've assembled it, mess I mean in glue, I'm going to end up taking material off of here. And if I take material off of here, I'm going to lose that fit. So instead, I leave the tailboard, in this case what's referred to as the drawer side, to be a little bit proud. So in this case, I'm going to take my marking gauge. If this is my drawer side, I would set my marking gauge to be maybe a 64th of an inch less than the thickness. So if I'm holding it like this, can they see? Am I in the line of sight? I would set my marking gauge just like that. So you can see how that's not quite the thickness of the piece. And I would go ahead and I would transfer that over to here. Now when I assemble, when this piece gets seated, it's going to be proud. It's going to be sticking up above the pins on the front and on the back. Once everything is dry, I then will take my drawer and I will plane that side until I touch the ends of the pins, front and back, and that is my guide to know that, okay, that should now fit that opening. What was the question?
I really don't know.
Neither do I. But I think I covered it.
Probably.
It was how proud you make the tails.
Oh, yeah. A small amount. You don't need a lot. A 32nd would be plenty. Probably a 64th would be plenty in the application of a drawer. Next, Frick?
Hang on.
What? So while Jake's digging that out. Sorry.
Todd in the chat said,
Which Todd?
I'm not going
Don't know.
to even attempt it, his last name. Did Rob and Frank Klaus ever discuss pins versus tails first? He has mentioned that they knew each other.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing he said someday we'll have a discussion over a beer. But I don't drink beer, so we never had the discussion. But Frank grew up in Austria, and he went through the apprentice program. So my take on that is you learn to do it the way you're taught, and wasn't really a democracy, so not like you could come up with a new idea. and tell the master that you got a better way of doing something. So those guys came away doing it that way, pins first. The English tend to do tails first. And I learned from Alan Peters primarily. But when you actually think about it, tails first is easier because, and I'll give it to you this way. No matter what, whether you do pins first or tails first, the joint always goes together the same way. The tails come down onto the pins. Do I have excuse me just one second. It'd be a lot easier if I actually have a sample, and I think I've got one that's not put together. At least I hope I do. Glued, 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 glued. Oh, they're all glued. Well, okay, I thought I had one that was just dry fit, but I don't. So tailboard always comes down onto the pin board. Always goes together this way. Can't go that way. That means that the pins, the dark portion, these cuts must be plumb. If they slope one way or the other, you're either going to have a gap or it's going to bind and split. So you have to be able to make plumb cuts perfectly no matter what you do. If you cut your pins first, you cut your pin board, and then you lay your pin board on top of your tailboard, and you reach in. Now you're going to try to mark, and it's going to want to follow the grain. So you try to do it with a knife, it's going to want to follow the grain. Do it with a pen, not so much. But now you're going to have to make perfect angled cuts because you've got to follow the line which is taken from the piece that's already been processed, the pin board. So we've already established you have to make perfect plumb cuts. Now we've established that you have to make perfect angled cuts too because you've got to match what you've done on the pin board. If, however, you do your tails first, the question is, do the angles matter on the tails? If one slope is 10 degrees and one is 9, other than it might look a little bit weird, does that actually interfere with the way the joint will go together? And the answer is a resounding... Anybody paying attention? The audience should be saying no, because this is the template. Does not matter. Yes, you have to make your pin cuts plumb, but you don't have to get your angle cuts perfect. So if you do it pins first, you got to do both perfect plumb cuts and perfect angled cuts. If you do tails first, you need only do perfect plumb cuts on your pin. Your angle cuts don't matter. So for that reason, I say it's 50% easier to do tails first, and I'm sticking with that. Next, Frick. Oh, Ken, last time we filmed, just before Christmas, there was Eric, how to pronounce the last name? Florp. There's an R in there? Is it? Who was a military vet that had started a business building saws. And unfortunately, found out he had brain cancer, and he passed away on December 31st of this year. Well, some people that were sympathetic to what was going on decided to do something about it, and I applaud them. So the chap's name that built the tool cabinet was, make sure I get these right. Charlie. Charlie decided. Pardon? Charlie McBride. Charlie built a tool cabinet. And many people contributed to filling that tool cabinet with tools. And then they didn't auction it off. They raffled it off. And the tickets were $25. And Wood by Right hosted it. So if you wanted to buy a ticket for it, you could buy a ticket. All of the proceeds went to Eric's widow and child. And they raised $90,000. That was amazing. Big thumbs up to all of you. It was fantastic. What a great thing to do. Our sympathies go out to his wife. Unfortunately, that type of thing happens. and we can only make the best of it. But to have the community rally around like that and show their support, well, what a tribute to the individual. And a big, I always tell people, I said, I'm in the best industry. I never get upset customers, except for the post office doesn't deliver their products in time. But in order to be a good woodworker, you've got to have patience. And if patience can be listed on your character traits, you're okay. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Michael Dodo in the chat.
Hey, Michael?
He says, what is the relative strength difference between half-blind versus through dovetails?
I don't know if there is. I mean, the interesting thing about a dovetail is if it's a halfway decent dovetail, the wood will fail before the joint fails. So I'm going to say there really isn't. At no time would I ever debate whether or not to use a through dovetail or a half blind because of strength issue. So I would say not applicable. Good question. Ken, any more vets to say hello to?
Yeah.
Who we got? This puts my memory on display. Good or bad?
Patrick Glenn, retired Marine from Appleton, Wisconsin.
Patrick? I don't remember too many Patricks. Huh?
Chris at Nestle was the one that built his bench.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember. Oh, yeah. We had them in the same class.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
Al McNeil's on?
Oh, I don't know him.
No, none of us do.
Probably some tank commander. Some random tank commander.
Tank guy.
Fire him 105 millimeter rounds. Hey, look, one land over there. Howdy, Al.
Corey Miller's on.
Corey got his new dog. Got his service dog just a little while back. Hope everything works out, Corey.
And John Wellens, who we had trouble remembering earlier from the July 23 class, wrote and said he was a Marine tanker, active duty, did really good dovetails.
Of course. Now I remember him. Anybody else?
No.
Frick?
Noah.
Noah's on? He is. Hey, Noah. I follow Noah on Facebook. Good guy. Better than New Woodworking. That's the name of his business. Oh, another woodworker. Attaboy, Noah. You watching that too? Good, Frick, Jake. Frick.
Yep.
And Phil Lawrence.
Phil? Phil's on every time. Heidi, Phil. Happy New Year, all you people. You people. Frick?
You ready this time?
Yeah.
Frick, you there?
Yeah.
How many do we have on, Frick?
524.
That's a decent number.
It is,
How
yeah.
many people have contributed to help us finance our Purple Heart project?
That I don't know.
Ken, do you know?
What?
How are our donations tonight?
Oh, yeah. We're about 1,800.
Okay, so we have 500 people. And if you do the math, you don't have to donate very much in order to make a substantial. What would $5,000 be coming from 500 people? $10?
Yes.
$10, a $10 donation. Now I'm going to start sounding like what's the Jerry? What was that telethon? Jerry Lewis. Yeah, it's a great cause. Nobody takes a wage out of this. This is all money that goes to either buying plane tickets, paying for food, paying for tools. So lodging. So show your support. $10 from everybody would be great. That's $5,000. $10 would even be better. $20 would even better. $100 would be fantastic. Shall I continue? Go ahead, Frick.
All right. Tom Holland in the chat.
Hi, Tom. I know that name.
How do you choose the width of the gap/space between tails when laying them out?
Well, it's always an aesthetic. I used to do this, and I've evolved. When earlier in my career, I don't know what the date is on this, but I'm going to guess it's right here. I built this in 2006. So you see how skinny those pins are? They're literally just the width of the saw. And the problem is, if you get a little ways away, you can't even see them. Now, I've never been a fan of big, fat pins, but I like to have a little bit of width, so you can identify it from any distance that you can actually see it. What I avoid is cutting pins that are wider than what a router bit will do. That's the enemy. Poor guy that asked that question earlier. So a router cut dovetail can't make their pins any narrower than 3/16 of an inch, because you're using a router bit that is wide at the end, and then it goes down to a very narrow shank. I've got an example right here. We'll call this an unused router bit. Actually, I probably did it for sliding dovetails. So you see that? Am I in the camera? Okay. So it cuts wide here at the top, and then it goes down to a very narrow spot. So if that were to go below 3/16 of an inch, chances are it's going to break. So that's the narrowest they can make them. So if I'm doing them by hand, I don't want to be anywhere near what they can do. So I'll keep mine definitely narrower than 3/16 of an inch, unless, of course, it's on a really big dovetail or a really big piece where it would seem appropriate. But I tend to stick around 1/8 of an inch or less now, because this is a small box, so this is a lot less. But for the most part, if you look at these, which I've been cutting a lot lately, these are a little fatter than 1/8. It's what you like, and don't be afraid to play around with it. And who knows? You may end up liking them be a little bit narrower, a little bit wider. Next, Frick.
Lester Holt
Hi, Lester.
He's from Lake Costant, Idaho.
Yeah.
I have trouble with gaps between my end lap and the end of my tails. What's going on?
I talked to. Pardon? Say that again.
He says I have trouble with gaps between my end lap and the ends of my tails. What's going on?
End lap and the ends of my tails. There's a gap there?
Yep.
Oh, almost always. This is the problem. Remember, Lester, if you saw me doing this earlier, if that wall, the end lap wall, is sloped like this, you put your joint together, and as you drive it down, it's going to spread and it's going to leave a gap. So what do? You set your marking gauge to the original setting on the end lap, just like that, and then you go in and you run it side to side like that to make sure there's nothing sticking forward. And that will solve that problem every time. Now, you also need to make sure that when you cut for where your half pin goes, when you cut this shoulder line right here, that you don't leave any excess material there, because that will kick the joint apart. So you want to make sure, and you can actually use your marking gauge to do that as well. I had a tail cut out here somewhere, didn't I? Yeah, right here. After you've made this cut, let me do it. So this is, I'm cutting off for my half pin. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to create just a little bit of a wall. That little wall will allow my saw to sit up against it. Now I can't have any material sitting above there, so what I can do is take my marking gauge, reset it to the original setting, and then come over here and just make sure that there's no material sticking up, and that'll check it for you. Can't get all the way into the corner, so at that point you have to use your chisel to finish that cut. Now it'll go together and it won't have a gap at the end. I was just going to show, oh yeah. So I had a really nice chat today with a fellow. I'm going to mention his first name. He's, every once in a while it was Gary. I deal with somebody that just really impresses me. And, I'm going to screw this up if I try to do it. Actually, it was Darren that I was thinking of. Gary is a really nice guy, too. He's in Oregon. But Darren, who's in Colorado, had a long chat with him. And he and his wife have fostered over 40 children in their lifespan, adopted the first 2. And he was telling me how great Purple Heart Project is and what we do. And I thought, you know what? That's nothing compared to fostering children and adopting children and taking on that responsibility. Just, wow. I just tip my hat to him. Oh, my hair falls out. Good on you. Next, Frick.
When doing the offset with the Sean Chim, if I want a tighter joint, do I go up or down from 24 thousandths?
Up. And so here's how you think about it. Jake, you need to get close on this. I think you need to. Coming in. I just took that piece of tape off and now I need it back on.
Oh yeah, I took that.
Huh?
You had a little bit of a roll.
Okay, so here we go. We take it, we use our Sean Shim. We typically use it at 24 thou. So we set it like that. We put this piece right here. Oh, just a second now, I need my dovetail marking knife. So the rule is, if we move to the left, move that to the left, so the big setting is on the top, we move to the left, we mark to the right. We're referring to the tail. So this is the tail. So I move the whole tail board to my left, I'm going to mark to the right side of the tail. So I've moved it over, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to put my knife down through here and make a mark, okay? Now I would then come in and I would set my dovetail saw right in that mark, and there would be my half pin that's going to fill this spot. If I had moved my tailboard over 25 thou, 1 thou bigger, then that saw kerf would be sitting over here a little bit farther, making this bigger, making that joint tighter. When it comes to the inside ones, that means you're going to go an extra thou in this direction and an extra thou in that direction. So these are going to end up 2 thou bigger. So as the number goes up, the joint gets tighter. As the number comes down, the joint gets a little more loose. Got it? Next, Frick. Ken, am I missing anything else as far as what I was supposed to say or do? Okay.
Fred Smithers in Goose Creek, South Carolina.
Fred, how are you?
When building drawers with half blinds, where do I reference from so the drawer goes together without any rocking?
Say that again for me, please.
When building drawers with half blinds, where do I reference from so the drawer goes together without any rocking?
Oh, I always reference off of the bottom. So when I have my drawers, I've got my 4 pieces, my drawer back, my drawer front, my drawer side, my drawer side. I always reference with the Sean Shim off of the bottom, because the bottom's the constant. If you have to fit your drawer to the opening, it's a little too tight, you always take material off the top. The bottom, before I even start, has already been planed, shot on the shooting board. It's perfect. So we always reference off of the bottom. And to add to that, you always make sure that you shoot on your shooting board all of your pieces so everything is square. And then you should be able to put it together and have everything fit and no twisting of your drawer. Next, Frick.
Robert in the chat says, I cannot afford your dovetail saw. Is there a less expensive one that you can recommend?
Next, Frick.
They told me to ask that. Really? Next?
Yep.
How do you attach a drawer from your...
Oh, I should say this. Do we have any in stock right now? Seconds? Okay. Ian just made 2 the other day. Had that little ripple in the top.
Yeah, but they sell quick.
Oh. If you watch the website, whenever we have anything with a cosmetic flaw, rather than take the saw apart and try to fix it, we just second it. And second it means taking how much off? $50. 20%. No. If there was a equally good saw, less expensive, I wouldn't be making mine. You have to pay for the skilled work and the materials that make this saw so that you can learn to cut dovetails like Omar first time around. That doesn't come cheap. I don't apologize for the price of our tools. We pay our guys well. We want them to have a decent living wage. We just gave them a nice raise.
What?
Not you. You're a volunteer. Crying out loud. Feed you, don't I? Okay,
I
next,
paid
Rick.
for the meal tonight, actually.
You did?
If you must know.
Well, thank you, Frick. I knew it tasted better.
I forgot your card, that's why. Alfred Borg in the chat says, does the Carfax 10 work on hardwood like we have in Australia?
Oh, Alfred, you Aussies. You guys use rocks over there. Holy smokes. I don't know, Alfred. I have never used one of my Carfax 10s on a piece of waddy wood. That stuff is just, I can't even answer that for you. I don't know. It's so hard. If you look on the Janka scale, no, let's have a look. It just happens to be right here. Baba. Romper room in the other room. So here's the scale. Jake, you're gonna really nice, really fun poster. So this is the Janka scale is the way they determine hardwoods. Rockwell is what they use for metal. Janka is what they use for wood. Gabriel Janka, 1864 to 1932. So if you look
I don't think his name was pronounced Gabriel.
Gabriel, G-A-B-R-I-E.
Gabriel.
Gabriel? Oh, Gabriel. Well, I'm thinking of Mike
Yes,
Benny.
you're thinking of a woman in place of a man.
Well, he's dead. Okay, so let's go to North America. Hardwood in North America, maple, hard maple is 1,450. Go a little bit harder than that. Osage orange, 2,620. Desert ironwood is 3,260. But if you deal with the woods that most people are going to be familiar with and use, you got maple, I said at 1,450. You've got black walnut at 1,000. Do you know Claro walnut's listed as harder than black walnut? That's hard to believe. Black walnut's at 1,000. Cherry, where's cherry? This has been faded, huh? Should be somewhere right in along
It's like
here.
690.
Is it really? No, it can't be 690. I'm not seeing it. Anyway, big leaf maple is 850. Give you some soft ones.
There it is.
Where?
That's where it's 950.
950 cherry. So let's say 1,000 is considered hardwood. Look down here in Australia. Waddy wood coming in at 4,630. In fact, so there's all the woods listed for North America. Here's all the woods for Australia. So half of the woods in Australia are close to 2,000 or higher, whereas half of the woods in North America are under 1,000.
That would be moisture content, wouldn't it?
No, it's just hardness.
Well, I know, but I mean because of...
Oh, because of
Our
the
excess
conditions?
moisture.
I don't know. 4,600, 4,500, 4,500, 44. You know, these are all fours.
So they have two numbers.
These
listed
are all threes.
They have two numbers listed in the top corner.
These are all twos. These are mostly twos. So Huron pine. Their softwood Huron pine is 920. What do we have that's 920?
Well, cherry's 990.
990. So you guys, you need a carbide dovetail saw.
Well, they certainly don't need 17-degree chisels.
Huh?
They certainly don't need 17-degree
No.
chisels.
No. Hard woods. So you try it and let me know. I wouldn't want to be that poor X10. Next, Rick.
Mike in the chat says,
Hey, Mike.
is there any reason not to clip the bottom of the tails on the half line so it fits together easily?
Is there any reason not to clip the bottom of the tails on the half blinds? No. I mean, so what he's talking about is before you put it together, I always chamfer the inside corner so that when you put it down, it'll allow the glue to go. He's talking about cutting a little chamfer on that part of the tail. You don't see it because it sits down into that half blind. I mean, yeah, you know what? The reason I would do it is you really need to preserve, when you cut a joint, you need to preserve this sharp edge and this sharp edge, so when it goes together, you get a really nice tight fit right here. If you bruise that, and then put it together, now it shows as a gap. So by cutting that little chamfer in there, you're probably going to help to protect that sharp edge on the inside of the end lap that will only serve to make the joint look even better. So, yeah, do it. Next, Frick.
Larry Rosine in the chat.
Hi, Larry.
How do you cut half-blind dovetails on a drawer front with rabbets that overlay the cabinet face?
How do you cut half blind with, yeah, that's a tough one. Tell you how I do it. So just so that other people understand. Where's the half blind? So this is a flush mount drawer, right? This drawer, when closed, is flush with the front. That's actually inset. Well, some drawers would have a rabbet cut out here so that part of the drawer front sits up on the surface of the case. So it would close like that. And the easiest way to do it is either to apply that little piece after you've cut the joint, or before you cut the joint, cut that section piece off, do a through dovetail, glue that piece back on, because the hard part is, if you want to get a really perfect fit, how are you going to plane that side to that opening if you've got a piece sticking up there? You can't. So why torture yourself? I tend not to use that because I don't really like the way it is. But if you want to, I would start with a thicker piece of wood for your drawer front, cut that off, cut a through dovetail, get that drawer to fit perfectly, and then glue that piece back on. Remember, a good glue joint makes a stronger bond than the wood itself, so it becomes two pieces glued together become one piece. That is the way I would do it. Anything else is just way too difficult and inaccurate in order to make it worth not doing that. Next, Rick.
All right, last one.
Last one, it's only 5-2.
Yeah, we got a bunch of prizes to draw for.
Well, what a bunch. Last I heard, we were at 1,800.
We're over 33.
Oh, my little speech worked? Well, let me give it another one. So, 500 people donating $20 apiece would give us $10,000. $10,000. What did we figure a class cost? 50? Was it 50?
52.
52,000. So 50, and that's approximate because depending on where they fly from, and prices just keep going up. It's crazy, but we're not going to stop because of it. So it costs approximately $50,000 for us to run each class. So if we were able to raise $10,000 each time we did this, 5 of these would pay for a class, which would pretty much tap us out for the year. But so dig deep, please. We have freedoms we don't even think about. We just assume them because they're there. Because many people have put their life on the line to protect those freedoms and to keep those problems from being in our backyard. So show your appreciation for them. Help us help them. It's absolutely a fantastic feeling to be able to step in and do something to help alleviate the pain that so many of these guys deal with. Thank you. I appreciate your help. Last question, you and Frick?
Yeah, this one's from Joshua J. Joshua J. in Eastern Virginia.
Hey, Joshua.
Easton, Virginia. Sorry.
Eastern Virginia.
Easton,
Virginia.
Yeah.
Don't
I
know
did
where-
say Eastern. It was my bad. How do you attach a drawer so that your through tails look like half-blind dovetails?
Oh. Same way I just mentioned, except for the fact that you wouldn't have a rabbit. So you can either start with a thick piece of lumber, cut off a piece that'll be the thickness of your end lap. So if I was going to do that, I would probably cut off a piece at least 3/16 of an inch thick if I wanted to mill it down to an eighth of an inch. And then I would take that piece that's left over and I would cut a through dovetail. And then I would glue that. Oh, actually, let me throw something in there. So what I would actually do is I would take my piece of my drawer front. Let me just find a piece that I can demonstrate this with. I won't demonstrate, but I'll talk it through. I don't want to use a piece of MDF. That wouldn't work. Here's a good thick piece. So if I was building a walnut drawer, I've got a piece of walnut in my hand, and it is a full inch thick. So I would start with a piece that is a little bit longer. When I say a little bit, let's measure it. So if my drawer was going to be 11 7/8 of an inch wide, this piece is 12 inches. So the first thing I would do, I would leave it a little bit longer, 1/8 of an inch longer. If my drawer was going to be 2 5/8 inch wide, well, this is 2 3/4. That's perfect. So the first thing I would do is I'd square it all up. Try to keep it as thick as possible. That means surface this, run through a thickness plane, or surface that. Then I would come in, or I'd go over to the bandsaw or the table saw, and I would cut a piece off that's 3/16 of an inch thick. Okay. Now I would set that aside. I would take this piece and I would get it down to finished dimension, meaning I'm going to reduce it in length, I'm going to reduce it in width. It's going to end up being a little bit smaller than this piece that I have set aside. I'd go ahead and cut my dovetail, finish the drawer all off, and then I would glue this piece onto the front. It's a little bit wider and it's a little bit longer, so that allows me not to have to get it perfect. It can overhang just a little bit. Overhang's better than underhang. Once the glue is dry, then I can flush it up on the edge, flush it up on the edge, flush it up on the end, flush it up on the end. And now I've got a beautiful half blind, and I didn't end up running into a situation where I made it a little too short on one side or the other. And that is the easiest way to do it. Now, the main reason I do that is so that I can do something like this, where you can match all your drawer fronts up, because all your drawer fronts have come out of one piece of wood that you've sliced 1/8 inch slices off of, built your drawers out of the same species, and then applied each of those drawer fronts so that the grain is continuous from top to bottom or bottom to top. That's the way I do it. All right, Frick, what are we doing?
Do some draws.
Okay, what are we giving away? We have to give away 3 dead cats. Want to do that right now? Well, Ken's figuring that out.
Yeah, just a second.
And we're giving away 3 prizes.
All right, let's go. Are we doing the dead cats first or no?
Yeah, let's do the dead cats.
How many of
first.
those?
3. Always give away 3.
3.
Dead cat is a sweater that is the warmest and lightest garment you will ever have. Compliments of Moose.
All right, here we
Has
go.
the Purple Heart logo right here.
First one's going to Jim Christmas in Long Beach, New York.
Merry Christmas, Jim Christmas in Long Beach, New York. You'll need it.
Second one's going to Paul Testoni in Rhode Island.
Paul in Rhode Island, all on the East Coast. You'll need it.
And lastly, Brian Casey in Auburndale, Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow. A local, Brian.
Neighbor.
All East Coasters, too. Congratulations, boys. We'll have them. You let us know what size and the address, and we'll get it in the mail for you.
Make sure you email support@RobCosman.com.
Email that information at support at RobCosman.com.
Okay. What do
So
we
first prize we're going to do is we're going to give away a complete Moxon vise. So this is a Moxon vise that is literally ready to go. You put it on top of your bench and clamp it in place, and you are ready. And that is compliments of Ken? Yes, compliments of Martin. Last name and first name go together. Not Martin. Martin what? No. You find it so we can thank him.
The winner is Rex Bradburn, who is a retired U.S. Air Force.
Hey, Rex.
He's in Palm Bay, Florida.
Good place to be. See you in a couple months. Congratulations. Skip Martin. Yes. That's what I said. The name went together. So now we're giving away 2 more prizes. What are we going to give away? What are we going to give away? What are we giving away, Frick?
What was I engraving this week? Panel gauge. No?
Something with half-line dovetail.
We haven't got enough panel gauges yet. Something to do with half-line dovetails. That's a good idea. Yeah, let's give away. Let's give away a Kerfex 10, a Kerfex 10, and a half-blind dovetail chisel, and we'll give away the good one. We'll give away the IBC.
All right, the half-blind, or the Kerfex 10's going to Carl Falk in Pulaski, New York.
Carl, wow, New York's really nailing it tonight. Carl, congratulations. And the dovetail, half-blind dovetail chisel, the IBC half-blind dovetail chisel.
It's going to
With the cherry handle that I turned.
Ward Wilson in Arizona.
Ward, finally, we got to the other coast. Congratulations, Ward. Remember, you guys contact us at support@RobCosman.com, and Gina will make sure that goes in the mail for you as soon as you get us the information. Stay tuned for, watch the newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter, I assume you are if you're here tonight, get on there, and we will let you know about the classes. Remember, the advanced classes are only for people that have already had training the hand. All the training the hand spots are full, but we always have cancellations last minute, so if you're interested, stay tuned. We got some new stuff that's coming out ASAP, so you're going to watch for that as well. When are we back, Frick? 2 weeks? You're good?
2 weeks, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Stay warm if you're in Canada or anywhere north of Florida. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you for your support. Please spread the word about the Purple Heart Project. Any combat wounded vet you know, have him go to our site, check it out, and so he can possibly participate. Have a good 2 weeks. We'll see you in a bit. Thank you.